All right, hello out there, group coaching folks. All right, sorry it took me a minute to get online here. I'm trying, as you can see, I'm doing the YouTube live from a different place tonight. We're trying out of our own barn. Normally at our house, we have some better reception out here. So I'm gonna give it a try, and hopefully all goes well tonight. If not, if there's issues on your end, things are cutting out, just let me know. Type that in and let me know. And then I did a little test run earlier. Everything seemed to be running smooth and running fine. So hopefully we'll be in good shape here. And yeah, it's nice to. I want to do these here because it's nice to not have to drive a half hour to my in-laws and then a half hour back afterwards. So save a little time and gas money. Okay, so looks like I have a couple folks here so far. I'll just give it a couple more minutes and see if anybody else joins. I know I already received emails from a couple of folks that they weren't going to be able to make it and be watching afterwards. So, and we'll see how it goes tonight. What my plan is to actually have a little bit shorter kind of session, theoretical session, and then maybe allow for a bit more time for questions. Okay. So it's a connectivity issue there, but now it looks like I'm back online. Hey, Marie. I'm doing my YouTube live, talking to my coaching folks. Okay. Well, we just had dinner. So you want to go inside and get some food? I don't know. I guess Marie's going to join us for our YouTube live tonight. You want to talk about longitudinal suppleness and balance? I'd rather talk about PJ Masks. Maybe Shrek. Want to give a movie review? What you thought of Shrek? Okay. Guess we're all going to get the silent treatment. All right. Well, it looks like I have another person online here, so I'm seeing 3 folks. So no, I can do photo now. All right, kiddo. Because Daddy's got to do his YouTube live. Well, it's going to be getting pretty late then, so I think we're going to have to go inside. All right, why don't you go ride your bike? Hey, kiddo. All right, we'll go ahead and get started now. Probably a few more of those interruptions, but it's life with young kids. We're keeping it real. Keeping it real here. This is, YouTube Live Unplugged. Things go off the rails every once in a while. All right, so I'll just start with the schedule for the month. So obviously tonight is our YouTube Live. Go shut that door so you're not being blinded. Laws to do this. So yeah, tonight is the YouTube Live, and then I want your videos due for evaluation by next Monday, which is August 12th. And again, if for whatever reason you don't get a video together, no problem. Make sure to send me at least 2 training questions that I can answer. Okay, so I'm here for you guys. Make sure to use this resource. And then August 19th, the following Monday, so 2 weeks from today, I'll be our monthly conference call, and sometime next week I'll get the link out for that. And again, that'll be on the Zoom platform as usual. And I want you to bring your questions for the conference call as well. So like I said in the very beginning, with the YouTube Lives, what I want to start to do is obviously still do a fair amount of theoretical discussion, but then also give y'all a little more time for questions if you have questions. So it seems like recently I've pretty much been using almost the whole time just in the theoretical discussion, which is good. It's a lot of information and that's nice, but I also want to make sure I'm keeping this really interactive and that you feel like you've got time to ask questions, because again, to me, that's the most important thing, is that you can pick my brain for your specific situations, your specific training situations. So I want to give you theoretical information. I want to give you that knowledge. But for me, the most important thing is to help you with the issue that you're having with your horses. So we'll see how quickly I can get through this. I always think, oh, well, it's only going to take me a half hour, and then 55 minutes later, I have to sprint to the finish line to get done. We'll see what happens. So first of all, yeah, so our theme for the month is longitudinal suppleness and balance. And next month, what we'll do is the theme will be more in the lateral dimension, so lateral suppleness and lateral balance. And we touched on both of these topics a couple of months ago when we talked about structuring your ride, and there was the discussion in, when you develop your lesson plans, thinking about what longitudinal and lateral exercises to be doing with your horses. And so basically these next 2 months, I just want to dive into these two areas a bit more in depth. Before I get started on that, our theme, wellness and balance. If you have any questions about contact or any questions pertaining to last month's theme, so if you have any questions, just feel free to type them out, and I can answer those and kind of wrap up that whole deal. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so then we'll just go ahead and get started. The one thing I wanted to say about contact, and the email for next week that'll be coming out talks a little bit about this, so I'm not going to go too much into detail, but just something to think about with contact is that usually if you're having connection issues, contact issues, that's a symptom of some other issue that's going on with the training scale. So like I said, I'll go into that more detail. I don't want to give too much away before I get that email out there, but that's that theme for last month. Okay, I have to turn this fan off because my notes keep falling down. Whew, we're just on the ball tonight, right? Children running in, and doors need to be shut, and notes flying around the room. So we're rolling. All right, here we go. So longitudinal suppleness and balance. When I think about longitudinal, so the longitudinal dimension of working with horses, we're thinking more of like the back to front dimension. So the energy coming forward from behind up to the rider's hands. When I think about longitudinal balance as well, I really think a lot about shape change. And so we'll go more into this as we kind of, what I want to do tonight is also kind of like go through the levels in our dressage test and talk a little bit about, okay, what are the different longitudinal or the different movements and the levels that test longitudinal balance. So as we go through the levels, and of course in the lower levels, there's not a whole lot of shape change other than the horse getting rounder, slightly more engaged with the hind legs and the working paces. But then as you start to move up the levels, that shape change that's expected, especially starting at second level and above, that's a much different story. So it's, it's the back to front energy flow, it's the throughness, and then it's also this idea of shape change and shifting the weight back to the haunches. And that's one of our biggest goals in our training, right, is over time, take the horse more and more back onto their hind legs. And again, that's that shape change that we're looking for. Back, but when we're talking about longitudinal versus lateral, I like to think about like the visual of like if you're looking down at a horse, you can imagine that there's a cross, right? So you lay a cross over the horse, and so this sideways, this is like your lateral, and the part of the cross that's pointing north and south. That's your. Oh, sorry. That's your longitudinal. Okay, and so that's one way also to think about longitudinal versus lateral. Is that little visual of the cross on top of the horse. Another thing that you can think about, and this actually I learned this visual from Scott Hassler, who is used to be the National Young Horse Coach, used to do clinics all over the countries, specifically targeted young horses. He talked about how we can bend the horse's back in a way. And he talked about that the lateral bending of the back is more like this, and the longitudinal bend is more that way. Okay, so this is kind of the shape change, or the change in the back, that we're trying to get longitudinally. So what are some of the exercises that change the longitudinal balance and create more longitudinal suppleness? So meaning longitudinal flexion, that idea of being on the bit and being through. What are some exercises that do that? Well, we've got transitions, right? So transitions are really the biggest longitudinal exercise that we can do for our horses. And of course, we should be doing, hundreds and hundreds of transitions in each ride. If you look at every single level in dressage, you look at all of the tests, each test, even training level, even intro, has quite a few transitions. So when you actually look at the points in each test, there's quite a few points just on transitions. And so basically the test riders are telling us how important transitions are to the horse's training. We've got different types of transitions. So not all transitions are the same. Not all transitions are the same intensity or difficulty level. Of course, at the lower levels, we start with just the more basic transitions, which are transitions between gaits. So for example, walk to trot. So basically just a shift in gear from one gait to the next one. You've also got then, as you start to move up the levels, starting at second level, you've got transitions that skip a gait. So for example, walk, canter. And then you also have transitions that are within the gaits. So for example, that starts at first level. And the good there is lengthening the stride and trot back to the working trot. So that's the basic, the basic transition work. And then of course, I guess I don't think you really have it in any of the tests that I can think of, but transition skipping two gaits. So the halt to the rein back, or you could also for the halt to the canter, or the rein back to the canter. That would be, that would be a transition that skips two gaits. And as far as I can remember, I don't think halt canter ever shows up in any of the tests, but it's an excellent exercise to ride in training because it's a huge strength builder for the horse. And then of course, yeah, the more gaits that you skip, then it makes sense. The more difficult the transition is, the more strengthening it is. We also have, in addition to transition, so within the gaits or between the gaits, then we have changes in the frame length. And in the dressage test, you really only see this tested at training and first level with the stretchy circle. Well, I guess you see it all the way up through the levels. In the walk, you see it where upper levels you go collected walk to extended walk back to collected, and lower levels you have medium walk to free walk. But in the trot, you really only see it at training and first level. And then they used to have at second level, they used to have a stretchy circle and canter, which I think is a great movement, but they ended up taking that out quite a few years back. Even though, say in Grand Prix, for example, they don't call for a stretch circle anywhere, it's still really important to change the length of the frame. And it doesn't just, and I'm not saying it just means riding a stretch circle, but it can be, maybe just riding certain movements with a little bit longer lower neck. So for example, if you have a horse that really struggles with throwing the neck up in the walk to conditioning before you go into the transition, to try to circumvent that inverting of the neck in that transition. And then also, same thing like doing pirouettes. I remember Jen and I went to the FAI Trainers Conference in Florida. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago now, and well, it had to be at least 5 years ago because it was pre-Marie, maybe 6 years ago even. And Stephen Peters was one of the presenters there, and he did a little lecture thing one of the nights that the auditors could go and watch. And he talked about when he first had Ravel, the first year that he campaigned Ravel at the Grand Prix, he actually rode his neck, even in the show ring, a little low, as far as what the classical standard is. He rode the neck fairly low in the piaffe, even in the show ring, because Ravel had a problem with inverting, hollowing the back, and disengaging the leg. So he kind of took some hits on some of his neck. he was then going to be able to bring it back up, and and then everything was going to be correct in the connection. So that's another example of like a change in the frame length. Not, he wasn't riding him in a stretchy circle frame length, but it was just a little bit longer and lower than maybe what your ideal pee-off frame would be. But he needed that to help get the horse through the back. As I mentioned before, that stretchy canter, that is it's something like I was telling Jen the other day, like, I need to do that more. Because it's amazing. Sometimes, especially when you're doing like high-level collected work, like pirouettes, or you're just working on the pirouette canter, forward back collection, that kind of stuff. Just doing like a circle of stretchy canter, it's amazing how it can kind of replenish the jumping and the bounding quality of the canter. So sometimes if we work a lot of collection, the canter can get a little bit flat, so that the horse can hollow their back, maybe get a bit behind the leg. But a circle of that stretchy canter, kind of releasing that compression for a circle or two, it's amazing how that can bring the suspension back, because you get that the back, again, you get the back really bowed up and the neck bowed up, and the horse can start to bound again, even with a really long, low neck. So there's certainly, even with very advanced horses, you really should be doing some lengthening of the frame, shortening of the frame, lengthening of the frame, shortening of the frame, because it's another variability aspect. I mean, that's what dressage training is all about, right? Is creating horses that are more and more adjustable, that you have more buttons to push, so to speak. And one of those is that you can change the frame length. So even if it's not called for in the upper level tests, it's still really important to do in the training, and they kind of get false. And we've all seen that before, where it's like there's horses that are kind of like shoved up in the attempt to collect them, and you can just see they're not through their back. They don't have the swing. They're just a little frozen and false in their frame. And so we really, of course, want to avoid that. We want to keep our horses dancing. We want to keep the back mobilized. And a great way to do that is to, just even in subtle ways. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a, training level stretchy trot circle. It can be just lengthen the rein a few inches for a certain movement, and then bring it back up. Or when you're cantering, do some pirouette canter, and then take a circle, you lengthen the neck a few inches, lower it a few inches. And it's a good way to test throughness anyways, right? I mean, we should be able to put the neck wherever we want with our Grand Prix horses. We should be able to bring them up and they stay through the back. We can put them down as low as we want, and they stretch willingly to the contact. So it's also just a great, not only it's therapeutic for the horse's way of going, but it's a great test of our connection as well. In Charles's book, I think it's Training Strategies for the Dressage Rider, he has this great pictorial sequence. It's a rider that was at Egon von Niendorf's institute in Germany, and it does this progression of the first few frames are in pee-off, where the horses, of course, pull the highest point, very correct classical picture, nose slightly in front of the vertical. And then it shows, and there's like 5 more pictures where it shows after the pee-off, the rider just starts to gently let the neck down, and it finishes, basically like a stretchy frame, what would be a trot stretch circle. And so it was just, he was just highlighting how even with the most advanced horses, we should be able to very fluidly and very easily change the horse's frame in that way. So that changing the frame length is something, and like I said, that's something that, something I need in my training. It's really easy to forget once you start working more into the collection, like, oh yeah, we need to keep putting their neck down, because we always think up, up, up. We want the withers up. We want the horse rocked back on their hind legs, but sometimes they need that stretch out as well. It's just like we go to the gym, we need to do some heavy weightlifting to get strong, but we also need to do some yoga to stay flexible. Otherwise, if we just do all heavy weights all the time, we get, lots of muscle, but we get a little bit muscle bound and we lose our flexibility. So we don't want to do that with our horses and our upper level horses. Or in a way, we're making them muscle bound, but then they lose some of the elasticity and suppleness over their back. All right, so like I said, what I want to do is go through basically kind of like a horse's career, going from a training level, a young horse, we'll say 3 or 4 year old, all the way up through the Grand Prix, and just talk about the movements that you see that test longitudinal balance and suppleness at each level. So we start with the young horse. So we'll say a 3 or 4 year old that's basically getting ready to show training level. What is going to be asked of this horse inside of a training level test that's going to showcase their longitudinal balance and suppleness. Well, of course, first of all, one thing I wanted to add is the balance level expected also at each level. So at training level, what they're looking for is a level balance. So by nature, horses carry 60% of their weight on the forehand and 40% on their hindquarters. And as I said earlier, our goal is to gradually over time shift that weight farther and farther back. So training level already, there should be subtle. It's obviously, again, we're talking a young horse, doesn't have a ton of positive with their balance. So we're talking about a level balance, basically 50-50, front end to hind end. Now, if you take a horse in the training level and you're talking more 60-40, 60% hind end, 40% front end, then those are the horses that score 80%. But your typical training level horse, 3 to 4 year old, that's kind of in a normal progression, and maybe not young horse candidate. Those are the ones that score 80% and then go to lamplight in the summer and showing the 4-year-old classes. Your typical young horse. That's going to be more just being brought up the levels and not maybe doing the young horse stuff. We want a level balance. All right, so longitudinally, what is being tested at the training level is, of course, transitions. And again, those are going to be the basic transitions. Now, I say basic, but there's no such thing as in transition. I mean, even riding a Grand Prix horse, walk trot is not easy because they all try to invert, they all try to get crooked. Sometimes they're even more advanced horses, a little bit behind the leg, that kind of stuff. So, I have on here basic transitions, but they're really not basic when you do them well. So, now we go to, what kind of transitions? So walk, trot, of course, right? We have trot to canter, and back the other way. So walk, trot, walk, trot to canter, canter to trot. And then we also have trot, walk, halt transitions. So your two center lines, now you can go trot and then walk a few steps and then halt, okay? So those are the transitions that we find in training level. And again, they seem basic, especially when you're reading through the test. When you go out there to execute them and you have to execute them on the letter, not so easy, not so basic. Longitudinally, also what else is tested is the frame change. So as mentioned earlier, we've got the stretchy trot circle, we've got the medium walk to the free walk, back to the medium walk again. So we've got the changes in the frame length. We don't have any transitions within the gaits just yet. Those will show up at the first level. So that's training level. So again, while on its face, it seems real basic. When you go in an actually write a training level test, it's actually not that easy to do the transition really, really well. But that is training level. All right, so now a 4-year-old, maybe 5-year-old, we start to think first level. So once again, first level, we've got a level balance. Okay, so we're still not quite looking for that uphill balance. We're looking for a level balance. What comes in at first level? Well, it's very similar to training, but longitudinally, we're adding in now some transitions within the gait. So we have now the trot lengthening to the back. So we go working trot, lengthen trot, back to working trot. And then the same thing in the canter. Working canter, lengthen canter, back to working canter. So that's really the biggest thing that we're adding. We still have the stretch circle. We still have the medium walk, free walk, medium walk. So and then the basic transitions of trot, canter, canter, trot, walk, walk. In first level, though, they do want you to go also trot to halt when you're going down the center line. So I guess we do have a transition that skips a gait in there. Is the trot steps in there as they are at first level. All right, so that's training in first level. So we're kind of talking like, 4 to 5 or 3 to 5 year old horses, basically. And then now we move to second level. So second level is where, you know, it really starts to get interesting, I like to say. Now, again, training in first level is very difficult. It's, you know, again, doing the so-called basic transitions. There's nothing basic about it. It's very difficult work. Training at first level is so important because you're really laying the foundation. So the transitions that you're teaching the horse at those levels are preparing them for the more advanced transitions that come later on. And that's starting with second level. Now at second level, the goal with the balance is to have the horse uphill. So now we're talking about collected gaits, we're talking about medium gaits. So this is a new sophistication in the balance. Now instead of the 50-50, we're talking more, we'll say 60-40 or 55-45. So the horse needs to start to show more of an uphill inclination in the way they move. That's because if they're in the proper balance for the level, so they're in collection, their hind legs will stay more engaged under their body, and they'll lift the forehand more. And the same thing with the medium canter and the medium trot. Instead of lengthening the stride, now we're talking about more of an uphill inclination. So instead of the working paces and the lengthening, now we're talking collected and medium. So inside of the test, what do we have? So we've got, of course, the transitions within the gaits. So collected trot, collected canter, medium canter. We also transition skipping gaits. So we have the trot, halt, halt, trot. And at second level, there's no leniency about those on those center lines. If you walk out of that halt at all, they're going to really nail you on that. So trot to halt, halt to trot on that center line. We also have trot to halt transitions, which then go into the rein back. So there's more trot halts than just the center lines. We also start to introduce the walk canter and the canter walk at second level, and that goes right into the simple changes in second 2 and second 3, where you go, say, right lead canter to walk, walk 3 strides, left lead canter. So we start to see the transitions that skip the gaits become more and more prominent. As mentioned earlier, we also have rein back. So rein back is a longitudinal exercise because it's a shape changer. So when a horse does a really good rein back, what you should see is their hindquarters should slightly lower as they go back. Now, we've probably all seen horses that kind of rush backwards, like run or fall backwards. Those horses don't tuck at all. They just kind of fall back. Or we've seen horses that are like super sticky and you're asking them to rein back and they're kind of look like they're stuck in the tar pits and it's really difficult for them. Basically, those are 2 extreme examples, but what those horses are both doing is avoiding this little subtle shape change in the pelvis that we need for a really good rein back. Okay, so the rein back is really important, and it's a great exercise in training because it really does teach the horse a lot about the shape change we're looking for, you know, in a collected and even gaits. So that's second level. What else do we have? Oh, I guess, you know, the rein back, I have some notes here, yeah, about the shape change and how to ride rein back. So the rein back can be really misunderstood. One of the keys to riding a good rein back is that the horse is very forward-thinking in the halt. So basically, when you go to ride a rein back, what you want to think is you're pushing the horse forward into your waiting hands, and instead of kind of opening the gates for the horse to move forward in the walk or the trot, you basically, with a passively resisting hand, you catch the energy. And with a horse that understands rein back, basically the energy bounces back off the bit, and then they start to ideally change their shape behind, sit down a little bit, and then start to go in reverse. So with horses that are just learning the rein back, it's not always that easy. You can give a perfect rein back aid, and they still try to blow through it, or they get stuck, or they go sideways. When you're teaching the rein back, a lot of times, unless the horse just does it real easy by nature, which some of them do, and some of them surprise you. You close your fist, push the leg, and they go right back. But a lot of young horses, when you ask for the rein back, they get stuck in the mud, they throw their head up, they whatever, go sideways. Well, first of all, I mean, you can get off the horse if you're on your own and just do it from the ground. But if you have somebody there with you, then they can help with a little tap on the chest with a whip. And generally, if you have a ground person there helping with the whip, they start to get the idea, oh, okay, I'm going in reverse. The rhythm of the rein back is also kind of interesting. So you would think, okay, the horse is kind of walking backwards, so that's a 4-beat movement. But actually, the rein back is different from a walk. So it really isn't a walk. It's a 2-beat movement. So just like the trot, they move in diagonal pairs. So when the left foreleg goes back, the right hind leg goes back, and then the same thing with the other diagonal pair. So that's something to watch for when you watch riders do rein back, is you watch for those diagonal pairs. And if you see the horse go 4 beats, you know, front leg, hind leg, hind leg, then that's a rein back that's out of rhythm, and that becomes a 4, unfortunately. So remember, in the showing world, I mean in training as well, rhythm is #1 thing. And basically when your horse is out of rhythm in any movement, you're really never going to score higher than a 4, because it can never be better than insufficient movement when the rhythm is wrong. Yeah, so like I said, a good rein back marches back with purpose. They tuck the pelvis. They have, you know, nice clear steps, and most importantly, they stay in rhythm and they keep their shape. They keep their round shape. A lot of horses will try and invert to drop their back and then kind of scoot backwards. So it's really important you keep that bowed shape in their top line, so that allows for that shape change. When they hollow like this, then they effectively they block the pelvis, they block the back, that shape change. So that's a lot of times when you get the horses either stuck or they fly backwards. All right, so that's second level. So yeah, we're adding now the transitions between, you know, or skipping gaits. We've got the more advanced transitions within gaits. We're adding the rein back. Now we do lose the stretchy circle, but we do have the, once again, medium walk to free walk. So there's the frame change in the walk work. Now we move up to third level. So third level, of course, now we're still doing the transition, skipping the gaits. We've got walk canter. We don't have canter walk in third level, because now we're not doing simple changes, we're doing flying changes. And I include flying changes in these longitudinal movements because really what is a flying change? It's just a canter depart inside of the suspended phase of the canter. So to me, it's another transition. It's an advanced one of education for the horse, but it is a transition nonetheless. So of course we add the flying changes to the transition list, and then we also are adding extended trot at third level. So now we have collected trot, medium trot, and then collected trot, extended trot at third level, and then we see the extended canter come into play as well. So now in a way we're talking even a little more sophisticated transitions within the gaits. Of course, rein back is still present in most of the tests, if not all the tests. And now we also add extended walk into the mix. So what is the difference between free walk and extended walk? Extended walk is very similar, it just has a little more contact, so there's a bit more of a connection. It still should be quite stretchy. A free walk can basically be in a loose rein, so there doesn't need any contact in a free walk. But an extended walk is just a little more sophisticated because the judge is looking for a bit more of a connection. So the horse is understanding the connection, and it's not a saggy rein. Like the free walk, it should have a maximum amount of overstride, really swing through the back. So then we add in the extended walk. Okay, so that takes us through third level. And then we start to move into fourth. And then, of course, the FEI levels. So fourth level, and at third level, well, basically, second level and up, the balance is expected to be uphill. So we're talking about collection and medium and extended gaits. But, as you go up the levels, there's going to be a higher degree of collection expected. So if, for example, second level, we talked about 55% of the weight on the haunches, 45 on the forehand. Now maybe third level, we talk about 60-40. So it's like just differing degrees. And of course, the Grand Prix being the most uphill that the horse can get. So a little higher level of collection than found at third. Fourth level is really prepping for the FEI. So now we add in, at fourth level, we add in some tempi changes. So even 4-1, you've got the 3 changes on the diagonal. It's no counting, but still, you're doing sequence changes basically, or multiple changes. I won't say sequence because there is no counting, but you're doing multiple changes on the diagonal. And then by the time you get to 4.3, you are talking about actual real tempi changes. We also add in the working pirouette. So the working pirouette, in a way, it's kind of both longitudinal and lateral because you're turning, you're bending, so it's got the lateral component. But longitudinally, again, you're looking for that shape change. The horse has to really sit down behind and basically compress all of the hind leg joints, sit down, and pick themselves up and turn, and pick themselves up and turn. So the pirouette is definitely, as far as like the canter is concerned, that's the longitudinal movement that you're going to find in the canter. It takes the most weight loading, the most strength for the horse to complete it. So that's 4th level. Again, that's kind of prepping you for the FEI. Then, of course, now we do move into the FEI, and I kind of just lumped pre-St. George and I1 together because I feel like they're really pretty darn similar. Again, the goal of the balance is an even higher level of collection than 4th level. And okay, and then yeah, so the new stuff really in pre-St. George, I mean, like most of the trot work is the same once you get above 3rd level as far as like what's the movements you're doing, but it's more about, again, a higher degree of collection, the higher degree or the more sophisticated balance. So even though you're doing a half-ass in both pre-St. George and 3rd level, the judges are going to expect to see the horse more uphill, more cadence, more suspended at pre-St. George than 3rd. So longitudinally more sophisticated. So the new stuff, now we're adding actual true half pirouettes. So the working pirouette, you get a little bit of room to roam, so to speak. In the pre-St. George, now the half canter pirouette, you're kind of expected to keep your horse's hind leg on the dinner plate, so to speak. So really very, very tight. And then we're adding 3 and 4 tempis into, now 4.3, I believe it has 3 tempis, so we already have 3s in 4th level, but we're adding more 3s. And then, of course, also the 4 tempis. Now, move on to I1. Again, fairly similar to pre-St. George, but now instead of the half pirouette, we've got the full pirouette, which, might not seem like, oh, big deal. My horse does a fairly decent half pirouette, and the full pirouette's no problem. But it's a big difference between a half and a full. Sometimes you can kind of fudge a half pirouette, but the full pirouette, your horse has to hang in there for quite a while, and there's really nowhere to hide on that full pirouette. It's not easy. And then, like the I1 test, you have to do both pirouettes pretty quickly. Do short diagonal, full pirouette the center line, then you do a change, another short diagonal pirouette. So that's another difficult aspect in that I1 test. And then I1, we're introducing the 2 tempis. So in I1 now we've got the 2s and the 3s. So now we're slowly entering our way towards the Grand Prix. And then, again, I kind of lumped I2 and Grand Prix together. The I2, the pre-St. George is like the mini I1. The I2 is like the mini Grand Prix. So you're seeing basically all the same movements. It's just now I2, they ask for a little bit less of it. So at I2, and I2 and GP, now we're looking for the highest level collection, the most sophisticated balance from our horses. So in the I2, now we're adding the piaffe, we're adding the passage, which again, these are longitudinal tests for the horse. The piaffe is the ultimate test of that shape change and that sitting capability in the trot, just like the pirouette is in the canter. And then the passage isn't so much sitting, but that's basically showing off the horse's ability to lift and to cadence their trot. So that passage is that dancing trot. So both very, very difficult movements, really testing the horse longitudinally. Once again, we have the pirouettes, like we do in I1, but in the freestyles, like the Grand Prix freestyle, you can actually do double pirouettes. So now in the regular Grand Prix, they never have you do a double; it's always a single. But in the freestyle stuff, the level of difficulty, you can actually throw in their double pirouettes. And at the international Grand Prix level, it's pretty much all the freestyles you watch have double pirouettes because they have to do that for the degree of difficulty. And also in I2 and and Grand Prix we're adding in the 1 tempies. So of course, and like with the Piaffe Passage and the 1 tempies, they show up for both I2 and Grand Prix. It's just you need more in Grand Prix than I2. So really the I2 is a perfect little prep to see, okay, are you getting ready for that Grand Prix? And then, you know, like all the other levels, you've got the transitions within the gates, or all the other levels past training level. You've got the transitions within the gates, but as you'd expect, they get harder and harder. So in the Grand Prix, now you have medium trot to passage. Medium trot to passage. So we're going from working trot to lengthening at first level to now at the GP, you've got medium trot to passage. Not so easy. We also have, coming out of the collected walk, you start into passage. So which actually I think is even more difficult because the horse really has to create their own power. When you go medium trot passage, at least you've got a nice, you know, you've got a nice push from behind, something to work with. But the walk passage is super difficult. And then to me, the most difficult transitions that you can ride are the Piaffe to Passage and the Passage to Piaffe transitions. And that Piaffe Passage transition is brutal. You have a horse that's should be, ideally, if they're doing a good Piaffe, really weighted down on their hind legs. Basically no forward momentum at all. And then they have to lift up their whole mass. And from the first step, start with this hugely lifted cadenced passage. And you know, my half quarter horse to try it, it's not so easy. So it is a brutal transition. I think Jenna would agree with me that it's like the hardest transition in all of dressage. Very, very difficult. And it's really a great, you know, it's a great test of your horse's strength and pushing and carrying power. There's a really cool video. Rainer Klimke did some educational videos, and one of them was like kind of moving through the levels, you know, showing low-level horses all the way up to Grand Prix. And the horse he used for Grand Prix was his gold medal horse, Ulrich. If you know Rainer Klimke and his story, he won the gold medal in '84 Olympics in LA. And in the video at the very end of the Grand Prix segment, he's just kind of out in the field with Ulrich just doing these transitions. Piaffe Passage, Piaffe Passage. And it was incredible how easy it looked, but when you actually ride it, you know how difficult that is. So that was a very, very strong horse that he had. Yeah, so those are the big things, you know, in the I2 and the Grand Prix. Really, the Piaffe Passage, those 1 tempies. And, you know, I think it's kind of that Piaffe and Passage is Grand Prix or not. And you got to have at least one of those pretty solid. Like my guy could Piaffe fairly well. We never had much of a Passage, but if you can at least have, you know, get fairly decent scores on one of those, the other one, you kind of muddle by, you can be okay. But that's in a way kind of, you know, once you have a horse at Prix St. George, it really becomes all about can they get the Piaffe and Passage. You know, most horses, if they can do, you know, they can do 2 tempies, they can get the 1s. But it's that Piaffe and Passage ability to do that, which kind of, you know, separates the boys from the men, so to speak, and determines that Grand Prix horse. All right, so that is the that's the longitudinal you know, movements that test the horse's longitudinal suppleness and balance going through the levels. So now you have a good idea of the progression from the very low level transitions all the way up to the Grand Prix and how difficult it gets. And what you'll see, by the way, getting back to Grand Prix and those freestyles, is you will see riders do these insane transitions where they do like extended canter right into a double canter pirouette, stuff like that. It's just crazy what they can do with the horses. And that's why the Grand Prix freestyles are so fun, you know, because, I mean, watching a regular Grand Prix is really cool. I mean, how effortless they make it look. But then when you see these freestyles that they do and how insanely difficult they make them, that's really a thing to watch. So, you know, just to finish up here, you know, what are some evasions that horses use longitudinally? Well, one of them is that they push their hind legs out behind. And oftentimes this goes along with horses, you know, inverting their top line, or inverting as far as like creating a U-shaped top line, or sometimes you get horses that overflex and then the hocks trail out behind. So this is something that certain horses do. Some breeds are a little bit more predisposed to this as well. Like I think Arabs are fairly predisposed to trailing out behind with their hocks. My Grand Prix horse, Warren, well, he would get wide behind, so I guess that's another longitudinal evasion. he would get wide behind with his right hind would step out in the extension. Then he does the same thing in the piaffe as well. So anytime I would challenge him, whether it was an extension or high-level collection like the piaffe, his right hind would push out. So I have to think all the time when I'm challenging him in that stuff, I right shoulder forward to the right. So yeah, so we've got the out behind issue. We've got the horses that either invert or overflex. So those are also longitudinal evasions. And honestly, I'd always rather have a horse that gets the neck too high than one that overflexes, because it can be really challenging to get them back out once they learn how to duck down and avoid the contact. So those are really the main evasions longitudinally. And then you've got, of course, horses that are just kind of frozen in their back, and it's really hard for them to make that shape change. So that leads me to the next point, is that the lateral suppleness and longitudinal suppleness really do go hand in hand. And that's why, like I was talking about in the structuring the ride theme, it's really important when we're riding our horses to do both. Now, again, some days you're going to focus more on the longitudinal, more transition work, whatever, and some days you're going to focus more on the lateral. But it really is, I mean, you have to school both of your horses properly, or you have to school your horses in both of those dimensions properly, because they do go hand in hand. If you have a horse that's frozen early and doesn't bend, you're sure as heck not going to get their back to bend this way. If you have a horse that can't bend their back this way, it's really hard to get to bend it. So it's like you kind of have to develop them together. You don't just say, well, my goal is to create shape change in my horse, so I'm just going to do for the next 7 years transition, transition, transition. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, good, they need transitions, but you've got to bend the back in both ways. Yeah, another thing is that we can, combine in training, just one last thing before I take questions, we can combine longitudinal exercise for even more value. So for example, I talked about a really great exercise that combines two is the rein back and the transition. So going rein back to trot, rein back to canter, or even rein back to walk. So right there you're combining the rein back exercise, tucking the pelvis, and then powering out either into the canter or into the trot or whatever. The same thing, sometimes what I like to do is I'll ride a horse. A really difficult exercise, but kind of a cool one, is to actually practice collecting your horse with a stretchier frame. Not like a stretch circle at training level, but kind of collect them up, shorten their stride, whether it's the trot or the canter, in a little bit longer lower frame, and then bring them up and extend. Or you can do vice versa, where you go big strides with a longer lower neck, and then of course you bring them back to more collection with a higher neck. So that's another example of like you can do transitions inside of the gaits, and at the same time also work on variability with the frame length. So that's another good example of how you can combine longitudinal exercises to bring about maximum gymnastic value. All right, and that is all I have for today. And of course, I almost took up the whole time once again, but there's 10 minutes, so it looks like I'm about 50 minutes through. So now that gives us a little bit of time for question and answer. So again, it can be about anything. I mean, obviously, if the theme here in this month is about the longitudinal balancing and suppling, but you can ask questions about anything or how your training's going, whatever. So go ahead, if you have any questions, go ahead and fire away. Don't be shy, especially since you're just on a keyboard or a phone. So if anybody has any questions. Oh, I think most everybody disappeared. I only see one person now. I think when I mentioned that there were going to be questions, everybody ran away. Oh, that's sad. Oh, here we go. All right, Suzanne. Oh, awesome question, Suzanne. And I think I'm going to have to make this a theme one of these months, because you really can do the whole thing. Okay, so let's see. I'll start with Suzanne. What are the steps to take a horse from simple changes to flying changes? Great question. So the big thing is the simple changes. First of all, you want to make sure those are really good. And to me, it's especially, well, I mean, both are equally important, but I think in my experience, most horses find walk to canter fairly agreeable to them. I mean, you have some that struggle more than others, but for most of them, you can teach them to do a decent walk canter in a fairly short amount of time. The canter walk is the really tough one. Once again, some horses, they find that easy by nature, but like Jenna's little black gelding free dance, I mean, he could do canter to halter, and he does the transition on his hind leg, but most horses don't. Like my big chestnut mare, I mean, it's taken me quite a long time to do even a fairly adequate canter walk, because she's just got this giant canter that just pushes and pushes. So most horses are more like my big mare, where you've got to really work hard on developing the canter to walk. But in a way, it's like that canter that you're taking towards the walk, that's going to be your flying change canter. The horse really has to be sitting, they've got to be taking the weight. I like to say that you've got to coil up the horse a little bit like a spring. So you coil up their canter. On second level, you do canter to walk, coil it up, sit them down, and then, you know, down transition, outside seat bone, outside shoulder back, boom, walk. In the flying change, of course, kind of that same thing. You coil them up, but instead of doing the walk transition, change your leg, change your weight, your seat bone weighting when you change the leg positioning, and then you pop them into that change. So that's the first thing, is you have to make sure those simple changes. There's a reason why second level they have simple changes. You know, that's the cool thing about the way they write the tests, is they really do try to give you a training plan for your horse. As far as like, yes, first you have to, you know, your horse has to do a little bit of counter canter. They need to do some, you know, some really good simple changes, have the collective canter, medium canter, collective canter transitions. That stuff's all important before you do the changes. The other thing I'll say, so that's more like on the longitudinal plane, which was our big focus tonight. Also, I want to make sure laterally that my horse is really adjustable. So I like to really test them with like some leg yield in the canter and then counter leg yield, meaning I flex them to the outside and push them off my outside leg. When I feel like a horse can go real easy yield, counter leg yield, and you don't stay near all that, but they just stay really round and, you know, you can kind of snake them back and forth. Then I feel like that's a horse that laterally I've really got between my aids, because that's another thing too. A horse that's a little bit frozen, you know, laterally, and usually it's too much neck bend, haunches in. Those are horses that the change a lot of times doesn't come through right, and they start to do the changes late. So that's the other thing, you know, making sure longitudinally that the horse is really easy to collect and extend, and those simple changes are good and they're sharp. So also making sure the transitions up are really sharp, because that's kind of your flying change aid. And then making sure laterally that the horse really is adjustable, real easy back and forth. But like that leg yield exercise, I mean, you can do that with a training level horse. That's not just like, oh, I'm getting ready to do changes. I mean, you can start that stuff so early on. Yeah, so early on. And again, every transition is setting up the transitions later on. Yeah, super question. And like I said, I think I'll make that a theme for the month. And by the way, I mentioned this, I think, last month. If you all have any issues or whatever that you want to be a theme, you can always let me know, you know, whether it's through email or any YouTube lives or whatever. You know, I'm always looking for ideas for themes for every month. So you can always let me know if there's something that, you know, some topics that you really want me to cover. Okay, let's go on to Heidi. What are the exercises that can help build strength for piaffe and passage and to help encourage bending? Okay. All right, we're going to take another hour with this one. No, great question. Now the questions are rolling and I love it. All right, so I need to leave more time. Well, we'll go over an hour. It's no problem. I don't think YouTube will shut me down. Okay, so the exercise that can help build strength for the piaffe and passage. You know, I think any sort of, well, like as far as the passage goes, you know, I really love doing the medium trot, the big trot, bring them back, try to cadence it, big trot, bring them back. You know, that's, I mean, it's helping the passage, but that's also really, really, really good strengthening. You know, Charles likes to do the school trot, like just that really slow. It's not a passage, but it's just a really slow trot with lots of activity. So I think those are some good exercises as far as building the passage. You know, honestly, I just think a lot of it is just doing it too. you know, it's just like, you know, hill work is really good, especially, you know, if you can do like that medium trot passage idea, like going uphill, that's a great way. And you do have a little bit of an incline in your backfield. So that's, you know, like with Williker, that's some, or with Tanner as well, that's something you could try, you know, big medium trot going up the hill and then really sit him back, half halt, tickle the whip and see if you can just even a couple strikes get them to dance up. So the hill work is great for strengthening. You know, all the pirouette work you're doing in the canter. I mean, it's a different gait, but it's still the shape change. It's still the sitting. And the pirouette actually may take the most strength of any movement in dressage. So I think doing that pirouette work for both Williker and Tanner is also going to help you with the strength that you need for the piaffe passage. And then the transitions, you know, going piaffe, passage, piaffe, again, really it's just about doing them. It's just about tons of repetition and just them practicing that weight loading and that weightlifting. And then exercises to help encourage bending. You know, I always love like the 2-track work on the circle. So the shoulder in, hunches in, and what I really like too is for more sophisticated, you don't have to be at horse. I mean, even the horse that's doing first level, you should be doing some shoulder and hunches in. Is you know, doing like shoulder in run there or hunches and shoulder out. So again, it's that idea, like I was talking about in the canter, that you can just keep the same basic alignment and angle, and just all you're doing is just flipping the bend over. So doing like this, you know, just singularly the shoulder in or the hunches in or the half pass, of course, is very gymnastically useful. Oh, bending the pelvis to the piaffe. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, I was going to say those didn't quite go together, but I know with Williker we're always talking about bending laterally, so I don't know if that's where you're going. Bending the pelvis and the piaffe. Okay, so you know, I think a lot of it is kind of, it really is about trying to get that ignition. We've talked about that before, like, you know, bringing them back almost to that point where they're on the top, and then, you know, tap, 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 whether it's the leg, the whip, whatever. And that's kind of where I think the biggest issue that I see is riders think, okay, I'm doing half steps, and they let the horse cover a bit too much ground. We don't want them, like, you know, we don't want to create claustrophobic horses that are standing on their hind legs the whole time. I've seen that before. That's no good. But you kind of have to take them to that point where, and you felt it with both, you know, Erica, you felt it with Tanner, Heidi, you felt it with Williker, where you get the ground cover minimal enough, and then if you can at the same exact time that they're almost like shifting to the halt, like then activate the hind leg and snap them under, that's when you get that shift. And it's very difficult, and this is why, I mean, teaching good piaffe is so hard, because the timing of it and like as far as the rider's aids, I mean, it has to be so spot on. There's no room for error. And you don't want to get them stuck where they're backing off, and that's, you know, your guys won't because they're not afraid, but, you know, certain riders that trap them too much, they go up. But you also don't want them going out too much, which is the other thing that we do, because we don't want to make them claustrophobic. The thing is, in my experience, I mean, if you're just tactful with it, and if you just kind of listen to the horse, you'll be fine. You're not going to put them in a state where they're going to be up on their hind legs, because you'll know to take your foot off the gas, so to speak, quick enough so it doesn't come to that. Another thing that you can do too is like a little bit of rein back into the piaffe. So the rein back gets the pelvis, again, tucking ideally, and then you just can try again. So rein back and then just a couple steps. Don't let them go anywhere, but then kind of make those hind legs lightning quick. Another one is like canter. You can go collected canter, like think pirouette canter, downshift into, you know, start to downshift. And again, just kind of hold them on the spot and pull with the whip and see if you can electrify the hind leg a little. So those are some ideas too. I think the biggest thing though is just the mechanics of not letting them cover too much ground. So whether you come at it from the trot or the walk, you know, like shorting the trot into it, or going from the collected walk into it, it's just making sure that the moment that you're thinking, okay, half steps, that they're really just inching along. I think it was Jeremy Steinberg who said the half steps should basically be moving, the horse should be moving at the rate of a very collected walk. So you should really be able to go like collected walk, half steps, collected walk, half steps. and like the miles per hour doesn't increase in the half steps. And then of course, as you bring it to the P-off, then obviously you get less miles per hour than the collected walk. But yeah, the rein back to P-off, the canter to P. Okay, let's see. Linda, I loved how you said every transition is flying change. Yeah, it is. If I allow Gia to lose collection, fall in forehand to the trot or walk when that is, what will happen when I ask for changes? So yeah, when they lose collection, a lot of times either they'll just change. They'll just change in front sometimes when they, so when their canter they lose the compression, so they lose that coiling action in their body. A lot of times they'll just change in front and not behind. That's kind of what my big chestnut mare does. Right now I'm teaching changes too, so if I don't really like have her rocked back in pirouette canter, she kind of bursts forward and then she changes in front, runs on her forehand, and the hind legs get left behind and don't do anything. Or if they don't lose that much balance, but they still lose a little balance, then you get a late change where they change first in front and then behind. Yeah, I mean, those are the biggest issues, I think, when you lose collection. Or, a horse that really doesn't know the changes, they lose collection, you ask for the change, they don't do anything but just kind of run forward and lose their balance more. So, yeah, that's exactly why you really want to be diligent now. And again, it's so much as developing that canter walk, because that's going to be your canter. And I also want to add with the flying changes, getting back to Suzanne's question as well, it all relates, is you really should be schooling at least working pirouettes as you're getting ready to do the changes. Because again, it's kind of that pirouette canter, that ability to really sit them down that we need for good changes. So we're not doing, hunter jumper changes. Yeah, very good question though. All those questions and the changes. Okay, moving on to Erica. Any tips or thoughts on how to adjust longitudinal balance from extended walk to collected walk without slowing down feet or getting stuck? Great question. Yeah, this is one of the hardest transitions. I talked about, the P-off passage is super hard and medium trot passage, but actually this transition may be even harder, because in the walk you have zero impulsion, you have zero suspension. And so really creating a good connection in the walk is super difficult, because you don't have that, where does good connection emanate? It comes from the hind legs stepping towards the bit. Well, in the walk, of course, you don't have a whole lot coming from the hind legs towards the bit. So it's very easy to have connection issues to find, the walk is I think, where you're most danger for rhythm problems, that kind of stuff. So yeah, going from extended to collected. One of the things that I like to think is, so with your case, it's slowing down or getting stuck. That's actually preferable. What you will get with some horses is, as you go from extended to collected, they immediately stiffen their back and they start jigging. So you get that loss of rhythm, which is obviously really damaging to our walk quality and to our scores in the show ring. So at least, Tanner's, he generally will keep his rhythm. That's huge. But yeah, certainly you want him to maintain activity. So, I think one of the things you could maybe do with him, just to kind of keep him on his toes a little, is go from extended walk, and as you're picking up the reins, shoot forward into a pretty big trot, and maybe do that a couple of times, and then hopefully you'll start to create a little bit of anticipation with him. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I would do with him. If it's like every time he you start to pick up the reins, he backs off. I mean, obviously it's not an impulsion issue, but it's an activity issue. It's a pushing issue. So maybe let's exaggerate the push and say, okay, instead of extended walk to collected walk, let's go extended walk to medium trot, and just make a point that, when I pick up the reins, you bust your butt forward. And so then hopefully he stays a little more self-motivated in the process, because that's the thing. I mean, you don't want to sit there and push and kick and shove, because then you're just going to kind of kill his swinging his back, and he's going to lose walk quality anyways. So yeah, I would try that a few times maybe, just like, yeah, extended walk as you're picking up the reins, boom, right off into the trot. It doesn't have to be, we're not talking about a great transition. We're not talking about a great trot. This is all just changing his mindset. And when you start to pick up the reins, he starts to activate. Yeah, so I think I would give that a try. And just, because again, with these horses like him, that he's a veteran, he's an FEI horse, he's kind of seen most everything he's going to do in his career, so it's easy for them to get a little bit complacent, and we know that's kind of his his personality anyways. Okay, and then let's see, Linda, one last question: is rein back to canter or rein back to short steps harder? I think rein back to the half steps is harder, just because you're talking about that shape change of the pelvis. I mean, they're both difficult. They both take a lot of strength from the horse, but to me, a canter depart is always going to be easier than igniting a pee-off or igniting the half steps. So yeah, the rein back to the pee-off or the half steps is definitely a little bit more challenging, not only for the horse but for the rider, because like I said, finding that perfect blend of holding them back and not letting them shoot out, but then keeping the activity behind it and the desire to go forward, blending that together just right is really, really hard. And that's why, again, even at the international levels, you don't always see a lot of really super great and correct pee-offs, because it is really challenging. Not only is it hard for the rider, but it's very difficult for us to do it the right way and to really change shape. So yeah, all right, super great questions. I love it. Yeah, okay, I gotta save more time next time. At least 20 minutes, because you guys had some great questions. I love it. Any other questions before we wrap up for the evening? Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions popping up, so I think we're good to go. But yeah, great questions. I love it. Thank you for the participation. Oh, we have one more question with Linda. Too early to try with Gia? No, I don't think so. I think play with it, And if she gets too backed off in it, then take the rein back away. But you can give it a go. I mean, give it a try. I think, honestly, when it comes to like, should I try this or should I try that? Almost, unless you're talking about a 3-year-old and it's like, oh, should I take them across diagonal and do a flying change? No, you shouldn't. But with stuff like that, I think you just give it a go. And I mean, everybody in this group is a tactful enough rider, and you all know your horses well enough that you can tell if the pot is starting to boil over a little bit in their mind. And so with her, if you try that rein back to half steps and you start to feel the anxiety build and she gets a little confused or a little backed off backwards, okay, fine. Then just, toss that in the, in the recycling bin for right now. Come back to it later. Now with the other mare that you rode yesterday with Bella, I don't know about that with her. I think with her, I would keep it more, just forward thinking. But I think with Gia, especially seeing that she had no anxiety at all with the process yesterday, I think I would, and I was in Fort Wayne, by the way, so I didn't get to see Linda ride this weekend, work with her. Yeah, I think I would just kind of, I think I would play with it and just see how she does with it. Yeah, super. Okay, any other questions? Awesome questions, I love it. Love it. Okay, all right, well, I think we're all wrapping up. Yes, you're most welcome, and thank you all for joining me tonight and participating. Wonderful questions, and as always, I'm available. So, if it's middle of the week, if it's between YouTube Live and conference call, whatever, and you have issues come up, you have questions come up, please shoot me emails. I'm here for you guys. So that's what this is all about, is to help you on your journeys and try to make the sailing a little bit smoother. In dressage, it's never totally smooth. There's always going to be a few choppy waves here and there, but if I can make the travels a little bit smoother for you, then I'm doing my job. So, all right, well, wonderful. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Get the video evaluations or the training questions in by next Monday so I can get you some feedback. And then, yeah, the following week will be our conference call. So I look forward to seeing you all then. So, yeah, have a wonderful week ahead. Great riding. I hope everybody's weather is pretty good. And, yeah, you can get out there and enjoy your horses. All right, so I'll see everybody hopefully in 2 weeks. So everybody have a great week and have a good night, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.